My name is Adam Andrzejewski, and I'm the CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. We've got a great topic this week. And before we get to it, I just want to review our mission. You know what it is. It's every dime online in real time. And last year, we filed 47,000 Freedom of Information Act requests. It was the most in American history. And we successfully captured $12 trillion worth of federal, state, and local spending. All right, before we get to the topic, I want to introduce my co-host, Tamara Colbert. Hey, Tamara.
Hi, Adam. Happy pre-Independence Day.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great
So
help.
we've got a great segment, Adam. We've got to get right into it because our annual Where's the Pork report came out, and you've got to give us kind of that big picture of what is in the federal pork and waste. How much are our tax dollars really funding?
So the federal government is not only wasting your money, it's literally ripping you off, Tamara. They're milking taxpayers like dairy cows. And so we've got small examples of, say, $25,000 on a U.S. State Department grant to the Chinese surfing community. I guess the surf's up in Guangzhou, China. You know, China has 1,000 coal-fired energy plants. They understand that you can't have a world-class economy unless you have cheap energy, but they're ramping up their coal production. Meanwhile, our State Department laughably is giving grants to their surfing community to have the surfers fight, quote unquote, climate change in China. So some of these things are small amounts, which just show you how bad the culture is, the wasteful culture in Washington, D.C. If the small amounts are off that badly, just imagine how much taxpayer abuse is in the large amounts. And we've got examples of that as well.
So let's talk about that. The large amounts, they really are significant and staggering. Can you share a couple of those with our viewers?
Well, I think right off the bat, the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS no less, they ran the economic stimulus check program. You remember the $1,200 economic stimulus checks that were mailed to your house in March and April of 2020 at the height of the pandemic, when our politicians in their grand wisdom, probably the worst political decision in the last 100 years, they shut down and locked down our economy. And so the IRS was in charge of getting the checks out to the people. And they caught 2.2 million dead people economic stimulus checks for a grand total of $3.6 billion. Now, just as soon as they realized their mistake, the checks were in the mail, the IRS took to the media and they said, hey, if you're a relative of a dead person receiving an economic stimulus check, please send it back. And Tamara, there are 77,000 honest people in the country who mailed the check back. So in the end, taxpayers saved about $72 million. However, the poor decision by the IRS of not checking with Social Security, they keep a deceased persons list. They didn't check the list before they cut the check. That cost all of us north of $3.5 billion.
I mean, that's just a staggering number. Didn't we recently hear from someone in the federal government that acknowledged they should have actually looked at the do not pay list?
Well, when you bring up the do not pay list, that's a whole nother $3.6 billion defrauding of the American taxpayer. So that was so on the do not pay list, that was the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, administered by the Small Business Administration. And they didn't check with the Department of the Treasury. They keep a do not pay list. There's 57,000 people on that got paid on PPP grants to the tune of another $3.6 billion. Tamara, why have these lists if they're going to cut checks without checking the list?
It's true. And then as we continue to go, we could go back and forth. We don't have enough time on this program to really delve into it. We've got the full report on our Substack page, but you know, there's smaller grants. I think one thing that's really interesting is our Where's the Pork report identifies some of the most frivolous and really unacceptable ways that our federal government spends money, like gambling chicken and how animals poop.
So let's just cover three of the smaller examples, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you got gambling pigeons. You got Fauci trying to turn male monkeys into females. You've got other examples of zombie cats that were funding a Russian lab. So let's break this down really quickly. First, the gambling pigeons. These federal agencies are literally gambling away taxpayer money on pigeons, no less. So there was $500,000 that funded a study from Reed College of how pigeons would behave when given tokens. Do they save them? Do they spend them? Do they gamble the tokens? With no clear correlation of how the pigeon behavior mirrors human behavior. But taxpayers are out $500,000 on the study. So then you got Fauci over the National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, about $500,000 of taxpayer money to turn male monkeys transgender. Look, this is an ethics question, as is the next study from the National Institutes of Health on, taking a cat at a Russian lab, cutting its spinal cord, loading them up with electrodes, shocking them into running on treadmills. Okay, these are ethics questions for the National Institutes of Health and Fauci's agency over at NIAID, under the National Institutes of Health. So who's the ethics czar over there? Oh, Christine Grady. Who is Christine Grady? Well, she's Dr. Anthony Fauci's wife. She's the chief bioethicist over at the National Institutes of Health. By the way, Fauci out-earns the president. She out-earns the vice president. She runs the largest ethics lab in the world. So where is she on these grants, these unethical grants? This is beyond abusing animals. It's beyond abusing taxpayers. This really gets into some ethical questions. And as far as we know, she's silent on these grants.
Well, since we're on an ethics kick, let's just talk about the congressional slush fund to hide some of their that was what was discovered in the early days of the Me Too movement. How much of taxpayers been on the hook for covering up misconduct in Congress? Yeah,
and the names of the members of Congress should be released, and as much information about the settlements should be released. $18 million of taxpayer money. At the height of the Me Too movement, everyone wanted to know the names of the members and for what purpose the settlements were issued. After all, this is taxpayer money. We should be able to follow it. So then Congressman Ron DeSantis, we worked with his office, and he wrote a great piece of federal legislation that would have created some transparency, and the House never picked it up. Well, we haven't forgotten about that. We're a transparency organization at openthebooks.com, and we feel that fund, that needs a white-hot spotlight, Tamara.
I mean, this goes right to the heart of what our message is, right? We need a transparency revolution. And if there's any time as we approach Independence Day, this is a good time for us to remember it's time for us to embrace that transparency revolution. What do you say?
Well, they are ripping us off. They're milking us like dairy cows, and we believe transparency changes everything. And I'm ready for that transparency revolution. This report is a good first step in that direction. We're bringing the heat so the politicians begin to see the light.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to read this, Adam, where can they go? Give our Substack address.
So we have a summary up at openthebooks.substack.com. And just come to openthebooks.com. You can download the entire report. I think it's like 50 pages. Mm-hmm. It's easy to read, and it'll actually be great around the barbecue over the July 4th holiday with the relatives. If you've got a relative that thinks that government is running well, this is a report to print and have on hand.
Absolutely. And with that, we've got, let's give a sneak peek to what we'll be working on over the holiday weekend.
So tomorrow, probably 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern, Joe Biden's White House is mandated to release their payroll to Congress. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we are first out of the blocks. We beat every single media company in the country to giving that report oversight. And we're going to do it again, Tamara. We're ready to go. We're going to give Biden's White House payroll oversight.
So stay tuned. You may see that over the weekend, and for sure we'll be talking about it next Thursday here on our Open the Books ripoff of the week. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Independence Day holiday, and we will see you next week.
Happy July 4th.